In that context, we are pleased to start our session with a presentation done by Dr. Samer Lahoud. Dr. Lahoud is an associate professor at the St. Joseph University of Beirut, where he lectures computer networking courses at the Faculty of Engineering, UZIP. His research activities focus on routing and resource allocation algorithms for wired and wireless communication networks. He had authored more than 80 papers published in international journals and conference proceedings. Mr. Lahoud received a PhD degree in communication networks from Telecom Britannia, Rennes, in 2006. After his PhD, he spent 1 year at Alcatel-Lucent Bell Labs, Europe. From 2007 to 2016, he was with the University of Rennes 1 and with IRISA Lab Rennes as an associate professor. Dr. Lahoud, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction. I would like to start by thanking the organizing committee of this wonderful event for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. As human beings, we are creatures of habit. We get used to things. And sometimes the changes that happen to the things that surround us, we just overlook them. Today, I'm going to talk about a change that's happening in the internet that's surrounding us, how this change affects smart cities, and how this change enables to bring smart city services. If we adopt a layered vision as in a form of a pyramid for smart cities, we identify smart people as the central part of the pyramid. In this layer, education, learning, and knowledge are the key drivers. At the top of the pyramid, we have smart governance, where institutions in the smart city make partnerships and alliances between private and public sector in order to bring smart city services. And in order to have a solid edifice, we need solid foundations. And these foundations in the smart city consist of smart technology, smart communication technologies. This is where we talk about the Internet of Things, and this is the essence of my talk today. What are the needs for an Internet of Things to support smart city services? In an Internet of Things scenario, we have and we bring internet connectivity to everyday devices. These devices can be air quality or solar energy monitors. They can be systems that spot the empty parking in a city or regulate the traffic. An everyday item can become an IoT device, leveraging on its sensing capability, the computation that's embedded on this device, and most importantly, on the transmission interface. Let us make the case for the Internet of Things using a concrete example of waste management, smart waste management in Greater Beirut area. We have a surface of 14 square kilometers to cover and approximately 50 bins per square kilometer. We equip each bin with a fill-level sensor that measures the volume of waste in the container and transmits such data to the network. This system enables real-time monitoring and predictive analytics on the long run and enables to optimize the waste collection routes and schedules for the trucks, for example. Using this concrete example, we can build the constraints on the Internet of Things for smart cities. We are here in presence of a wide area coverage. We are talking about 14 square kilometers. So we definitely need cost-efficient wireless communication technologies that should scale with the number of devices we might have in a smart Beirut city. We also have, for example, sensors that are near the recycle bins, so we have difficulty to reach the power grid. This limited access to power sources puts a constraints on the wireless communication technology. We definitely need a technology that has long battery lifetime. Finally, a good thing, we have very loose bandwidth and latency constraints. Transmitting measurements from the volume of waste to the network does not necessitate particularly high data rates or low latency. So I propose in the coming minutes to challenge the existing wireless communications we are using every day and see if they satisfy the constraints we have just established. We will use a spider graph with multiple criteria, such as coverage, battery life, radio subscription cost, or data rate. And let us step back and observe the evolution of the wireless communications for the last 20 years. We are all here benefiting from the short-range wireless, namely Wi-Fi or even Bluetooth, or maybe in some scenarios, Zigbee connections. Such short-range wireless communication technologies have demonstrated great efficiency in terms of cost deployment, and good battery life and average data rate. But these technologies fall short when it comes to meeting the constraints we have just fixed, mainly because of their low coverage. An access point, and Wi-Fi access point covers, for example, hundreds of meters, so it falls short in meeting the constraints of wide area coverage we have just examined. Let us examine the tremendous explosion we had in the mobile cellular technologies, for example, 3G or 4G or even 5G. We are expecting gigabits per second of speed on 5G and less than 5 milliseconds of delay. But these faster and faster technologies are not the perfect fit for our use case or smart waste management, mainly because of the battery life. So if we examine carefully the spider graph we have mentioned here, we spot an empty gap that will be filled by a set of technologies that will be called low-power wide area networks. So now that we have established the needs for IoT to support smart cities, let's see what are the promises of such services. We are here in presence of a big market estimated of hundreds of billions of dollars and a growth around 30% until 2020. This market is dominated by three major services, and on top of them is smart cities. If you look at the explosion of the number of connected devices that will reach 30 billion devices until 2020, we can see that in absolute numbers, the most devices will be short-range devices, meaning Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or Zigbee. But the highest compound annual growth rate is related to wide area IoT, which we have just called low-power wide area networks. So the battle for low-power wide area networks in IoT to support smart cities will be harsh. A lot of technologies such as LoRa, Sigfox, Ingenue, and NB-IoT will be contending for market shares. And the criteria that will enable to assess the performance of such technologies are certainly numerous. Let us examine some criteria that enable to make the comparison. Starting with the spectrum, LoRa and Sigfox have chosen to use the unlicensed spectrum. They can, for example, leverage on the 868 megahertz bandwidth, and they can have low cost of entry to the market due to the absence of license. At the opposite, NB-IoT leverages the investment in the licensed spectrum usually made for LTE networks. And in this way, it consolidates the position of mobile operators. Second comes the deployment type. The deployment can be of type private. For example, any smart city willing to deploy smart waste management can provide the end-to-end deployment with a LoRa network. It could be a national deployment using the infrastructure of mobile cellular technologies. And Sigfox and Ingenue has brought to the market one original idea of how to make the deployment. Any network belonging to Sigfox is just a termination of a worldwide network. So roaming is very easy using these technologies. Third comes the maturity. We have seen a breakthrough lately from technologies such as LoRa and Sigfox because devices are already available in the market and at low cost. At the opposite, NB-IoT has a little bit late in producing the 3GPP standard, and products are yet to arrive to the market. Finally, here is a turning point when it comes to deciding what's best technology for LP1 in IoT. It's about the quality of service. When it comes to installing mission-critical services, there is no replacements of licensed spectrum and scheduled access, such as the case for NB-IoT. LoRa and Sigfox can only bring best effort services that can be adapted for specific scenarios, such as, for example, smart waste management. The battle has not ended. And here comes a good contribution from the scientific research, academic and industry, that brings an added value in understanding the evolution and the challenges of IoT for smart cities. Research contributes efficiently in performing scientific assessment of the Internet of Things technologies that help decision makers, and these decision makers can be regulators, operators, local governance, or public authorities. And some examples of contribution can be the measurement of the coverage, the capacity of an IoT deployment. It can be simulation that enables to get the upper bound on the performance of a technology, or testing the validity of new concepts in IoT, for example, bringing localization without GPS. Keeping this in mind, we have started at the Faculty of Engineering, USIB, at USG since April 2016 by exploring a technology called LoRaWAN. LoRaWAN is one of the promising IoT technologies for low-power wide area networks. It's a combination of communication protocol and architecture using an original physical modulation called LoRa. In a LoRa network, devices transmit in an uncoordinated way, and gateways receive the data, transmitted to the network server, and then to the application. LoRa is currently supported by an alliance of big industries, including Cisco, Google, Orange, RM, or Semtech. And interestingly, we are expecting a future deployment of a LoRaWAN national network in Lebanon. The tender was issued in September 2016, but we recently heard about some good news about this tender. So the main innovation in LoRaWAN is the physical modulation, and it's called LoRa. LoRa is a robust modulation that enables to get very large coverage due to the factor that can be tuned, and it's called spreading factor. LoRa operates in license-free bands. Typically in Lebanon, this corresponds to 868 megahertz. And as we are operating in a license-free band, we should keep up with some regulations. There are two spectrum regulations with LoRa. The transmit power is limited to 14 dBm. This is equivalent to 25 milliwatt compared to the 20 watt of a base station of LTE 3G network. You see how important it can be bringing low power solutions. And we have to respect a 1% duty cycle. Each LoRa transmitter, when it transmits a frame for 1 millisecond, it should not use the same subband for the coming 99 seconds. It's a way to ensure fairness to access to an unlicensed spectrum. The coverage is tremendous in LoRa. We have reached a record in Lebanon of transmission of 45 kilometers between a gateway installed at Chateau Kefraya and a mobile device speaking LoRa in Baalbek. The data rates are, not surprisingly, very low, ranging from 300 bit per second to 5.5 kilobit per second. So we have installed and devised an exhaustive measurement campaign this summer in order to assess the adequacy of this new technology for installing smart city services in Beirut. We have installed the first experimental LoRaWAN network in Lebanon with a gateway that is present at Uzib, Marrouz, overlooking the urban city of Beirut. We have mounted 3 LoRa devices, transmitters, at different heights, 20 centimeter, 1.5 meter, and 3 meters. And we have spotted 35 locations in Beirut, ranging from 1 kilometer away from the gateway till 9 kilometers. And we have performed exhaustive measurements, transmitting multiple frames at periodic instants. The outcome of this scientific study was a set of points giving us an estimation of the received power at the gateway. And this gives us a simple equation that can be used by any deployment for LoRa, any operator, or any smart city investor. This gives us the power received as a function of the distance and the height of the transmitter. So this is a useful tool when it comes to estimating the coverage. And we have used this tool to replicate the coverage on the smart waste management service. We get back to the example of smart waste management with 40 square kilometer area. And we can see that there is a perfect coverage for the northeastern part of the area, where the green color means a good reception, and blue relatively low signal. We have some coverage holes in the Deishuni Valley, but this is mainly due to the topography of the region. We have almost 100% as a coverage in the western part of Beirut, and some more coverage holes in the city center. This is also due to the topography. We can see on the right part the transmitter, and on the left part of the figure the gateway, and we can see that there is no direct line of sight between these two devices. So this coverage hole can be easily solved by installing an additional gateway. And we have closed the loop of performance assessment of LoRa by performing drive tests. So we took the car, mounted with our research assistant, a LoRa transmitter on the rooftop of a car, and we went through the streets of Beirut, and we verified the excellent coverage of the LoRa technology. This is a promising solution for bringing smart city services in Beirut. Second, we explored the power efficiency of a LoRa transmitter. We have a smart plant installed in our lab, and we have equipped this plant with some sensors and a transmitter that transmit each minutes, every 10 minutes, the measurements of light, moisture, and humidity, and moisture, light, and temperature. And it transmits these data to the gateway. So we had this transmitter functioning for a whole year of autonomy between June 2017 and June 2018. Unfortunately, the plant has died due to bad conditions in our lab. It's an excellent environment for research, but not for plants. So finally, we also performed mathematical computation to estimate the capacity of a LoRaWAN deployment. We are curious to see how many devices we can support in a real smart city scenario. And this comes only by understanding the mechanism used in LoRaWAN. In fact, in LoRaWAN, two devices can transmit simultaneously at the same frequency without any coordination, so their transmission will collide and packets will be lost. So we need a mathematical model to assess the performance of this network. And if we consider, for example, devices sending one message every 30 minutes, and if we require 90% of success rate, we can go up to 27,000 devices in smart Beirut area. We can easily double these numbers if we add more gateways. Let us now examine the challenges that are coming by bringing IoT to support smart city services. And in order to understand these challenges, we need to have a global overview of the ecosystem of the Internet of Things and the related business models. In an end-to-end IoT chain, we have multiple providers: a device provider, a network provider, a platform, an application provider. And if we look at the revenue shares, we see that the application and the device and the platform providers get, for example, more than 25%, while the network provider, unfortunately, gets only 15%. But let's examine more interestingly the EBIT margin, which is the ratio between the earnings and the net revenue. And here we can see a very problematic number, which is 5% of EBIT margin for device providers, and a very good number, a very good news for application providers, where the EBIT margin goes up to 25%. So if we get back to the global overview, any smart city with sufficient resources can decide to implement an end-to-end chain. This ensures the privacy, this addresses the privacy issue in an IoT to support smart city services, and this brings a device to application chain. If we have a smart city that has limited resources, it can concentrate and focus on the platform and application provisioning and make, for example, public and to private partnerships to benefit from a national network or from a private local network. Finally, I will present the challenges of IoT for smart cities as open questions for debate. The first question I'm going to ask is how to encourage Lebanese engineers, and we're certainly a lot here, to be involved in the research and innovation in IoT. If we examine a little bit the last 20 years, we can see that we have been end users and end consumers for the internet solution. So we need to ask ourselves, How can we seize the momentum and become active participants in the standardization and the design process of the new Internet of Things? Second, how to ensure the openness of the market for smart cities. As we have seen, the battle for the winning technology has not ended, and it will be harsh. So we should think whenever we implement a technology in a smart city in Lebanon about ensuring the interoperability and ensuring the opportunities of investment of local enterprises. We should also be aware of the importance of the integrations of different platforms. Finally, the last question is how about enforcing local governance and citizen decision-making? Let us not forget that in some countries where the democracy can be a little bit malfunctioning, cities can be the last barrier where citizens can exert meaningful democratic power on their own lives. We will see more and more examples, and we have seen today a lot of examples where enterprises such as Google, Amazon approach cities to deliver smart city services. This is the case, for example, for Toronto, Ontario in Canada. These key players, such as Google, Amazon, will bring democratic functions to smart cities. When they bring algorithms, we should make sure that these algorithms are transparent. They respect the privacy of the citizens. They can bring automation, algorithm, and artificial intelligence, and this is really interesting. But as citizens, should we forget about the democratic control and ownership of our own resources? This is one important question that could be debated in the following questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lahoud. Since we are a little bit short on time, we will keep questions till the end of the session. So we will move now to a short presentation about Beirut Digital District experience. The presentation will be given by Mr. Mohammed Rabah. As General Manager of ZRE, Mohammed Rabah founded and grew ZRE to become a market leader in property development with an aim to building communities. He is the CEO of Beirut Digital District, a 15-year vision aiming to develop a work, live, and play innovative, smart, sustainable regional cluster catered to digital and creative communities. Mohammed heads the executive committee of the leading LPG distribution company in Lebanon and is a board member in Blombank. Holder of a master's degree in science from the University of Texas at Austin and a civil engineering degree from the American University of Beirut, Mohammed has previously worked in strategic and management consulting jobs for the energy, aerospace, and construction industries. Mr. Rabah, the floor is yours.
Thank you for having me join here. I've been told I have 10 minutes. I will try to summarize with you the experience that we have in BDD. What you will see a bit is a small nomenclature and project of what we saw for Tartu in Estonia from our friend. And I will try to focus at the end how we're trying to digitize the experience of our community members. So let me start by just giving you a small manifesto of ZRE, the company that we lead, which is a development company, to tell you how we look at real estate and how technology is impacting real estate. So this movie.
Times are changing, and so are spaces. Homes reflect personalities. Offices are hubs for friendships and creativity. And nature fuses the external world with the indoors. Spaces have become a statement of humanity, an ode to existence, a sense of life. It's no longer about building blocks, nor about layers of concrete. It's about building adventures, memories, and stories. It's about building communities.
So yeah, everything we think technology has impacted real estate by making it, we focus always on which community we want to target, which community we want to service, and what are the needs of this community. How can we make them feel? Because we believe internet has connected like-minded people to bring them together to same spaces, to share ideas and grow. And on that perspective, the largest community that we've built during the last 6 years, and it's our vision to build it for the upcoming 15 years, is the Beirut Digital District. BDD, who knows BDD? That's a good percentage. Who has been to BDD? Okay, that's lower. I invite everyone to visit BDD because everything that I'm gonna say or show you is a fraction of the energy and hope that you see when you walk into BDD. You see this hope for Lebanon that could transform the city. And this is what we're trying to accomplish by bringing great people, which Lebanon has, which starts with the universities, with the schools, because what Lebanon has is that talent. And we want Lebanon to become the production hub for the region, to retain the engineers and the talent here, to produce and connect them through digital highways to the region. And from that perspective, we started 6 years ago. Just to tell you, BDD, for the people who does not know about BDD or its location, we call it point zero of Lebanon. It's intersection of north, south, east, and west. And it is at the intersection of Shahar al-Khouri and Fuad Shahab. And that's why, unfortunately, it was the no man's land and the separation between East Beirut and West Beirut during the wartime. But more people would know it. It is in Khanda al-Ghami. Who knows Khanda al-Ghami? Yeah, everyone knows. And unfortunately, we know that story. It was a big challenge to go there and create the story. That's what makes the beauty out of it. Because we knew if we can do it in Khanda al-Ghami, it can be replicated everywhere in Beirut. And we know that it is only by including the community of the neighborhood, working with them, creating job opportunities, enhancing the digital citizenship experience that we can achieve our results. And this is what's all about SMART, is how can you improve the daily life, how can you create more jobs, how can you collect data and try to improve the experience of your community or your target customer. And this is what's happening in the trend. So just to give you a glimpse of BDD, in 6 years, we went from a war-torn area to a community of 1,500 community members. That is, the average age is 32 years old, 55% female. We're proud of this percentage, we believe. And on that, we have startups, scale-ups, and large companies. We have 75 startups that graduate from our accelerator on a daily basis. Very much of them work on Internet of Things, smart cities, all the different topics that you have heard about. We are 10 building currently, and we have multinational companies, small startup companies in healthcare. We grew BDD by using our partnerships, by leveraging our partners and helping them to grow. And we always looked at ourselves as a startup that will help startup. And as they grow, we achieve our goal, which is to attract 10,000 dynamic creative talent who will be working and living and playing at BDD by 2030. And from these, how to do that? We always looked at 5 foundations, and most importantly, as we said, community. Like-minded people, which are IT, ICT, engineers, digital, media, architects, interior decorators, fashion, art, to be brought in the same cluster to help them to connect, collaborate, and grow. So that successful ideas and mentors will help the new startup ideas. Business cluster is all about the idea of the sharing economy. We all know that the new economy is the sharing economy. Uber, automotive, mobility, Airbnb, hotels, everything is about sharing, maximize the efficiency of the space of our community, and share services that the community can benefit from. Design, for us, is smart neighborhoods, smart buildings, and integrate, most importantly, is, as Anthony Viva said, is leverage our heritage. We are in a very strategic component where we want to retain our heritage and do a marriage between the past and introduce the future, which is the modern, technological savvy types of architecture. And so retain our neighborhood, retain our old buildings, and introduce the collaborative types of architecture into the neighborhood while preserving its human sense and human approach. Sustainability, we believe no project will be successful if it's not a sustainable project. That's why we aim to achieve at least a LEED neighborhood silver rating. And the next project, which is phase B of BDD, will get a gold certification from LEED. Finally, work-life balance is all about the well-being of our community. It's how to introduce all the amenities that are needed by our community to be able to help their services on the daily basis. We started with canteens, fitness classes for free on a daily basis, eventually kindergarten for working families, digital post, mini market, free library for exchanging books, and all of these to just use it and make it a community that is self-sustainable, technologically savvy, and improving the consumer experience that lives at BDD. A word says 1,000 words. That's only 6 years ago. And you see this old house in the back, and you're going to see the photo of it just shortly. So this is how we started 6 years ago. This is when we started with the team turning into the office. This is Abu al-Mout, Abu al-Jamajim. We know them personally. I'm not kidding. So it's part of the neighborhood. And currently they are proud of being at BDD. Because some families in the neighborhood work as service providers, as security indirectly, because we put their children in the Bashura public school. And everything that is any citizen is looking for is how to improve and give him hope and how to improve his daily life. And this is what SMART should be about, is how to improve your citizen daily life. What is their problem and how can you improve it while leveraging technologies and you to make it faster and better. And this, we just added this photo, because this is the intersection. This photo, Bshara al-Khouri made the Times 20th century pictures into this. So what is this? Community, people, talks, mentorship, successful ideas, sharing of ideas. This environment, all about community, all about work-life balance, all about nice design, to integrate what our consumers need, what our startups, what the new millennials need. This is the old house that's been fully renovated and integrated within the gardens, which is the sustainability that we'd like to introduce. Also, just to add, on a building that was war marks still seen with the bullets on it. We wanted to transform it because it was the entrance of BDD. And we commissioned a graffiti artist, which is Jorge Grada, to share with him our vision. Because we believe the salvation of our region lies only in education. And I would like to stress education of women, because it's women who will teach their children to be as educated as they are. And this will make the change for generations to come. And for that, he put this graffiti showcasing a child working on STEAM education, microelectronics, because STEAM is the future of education, which will come into it. So we started, it's a 15 years vision with phase A that we completed. And so with phase A that we completed, and currently we started with phase B. The idea is to reach 120,000 square meters, but most importantly, is to attract 10,000 dynamic creative talent, not only be working at BDD, but living and playing by introducing furnished apartments, residential apartments, 3-4-star hotels, and always the new types of trend of collaborative apartment, of shared apartment, maximizing the shared spaces for the community spaces so that community can interact and flourish. Just a sample of our design, we always work with Lebanese architect, young Lebanese architect. Parallax is one. We won great achievements and prizes. We won for one of the concepts that we'll see. So this is with this in the middle is a 150-year-old church that just won for its renovation concept, the American Institute of Architecture in LA concept. For its new concept. And the concept is retaining its old structure, introducing the ceiling, which will be modern, and from the ceiling, light will enter, which represents sharpnels, because it's the sharpnels of 4, but from these sharpnels, enter the light to give rebirth to the new. And imagine 150 years down the time, if someone comes, he's gonna see the old structure of 150 years and the modern structure of 150 years, because we're gonna mark it, because we have the date when it was constructed. So this is the type of architecture that we want to add. So that's the sharpness and the light giving the rebirth for the new generations. This concept, which is the upcoming residential units, and you see on multiple floors the gardens, the greeneries, and these will be the shared facilities for the people who will live in it, has been shortlisted in Cityscape Dubai for finalists against the Opus for Zaha Hadid and RMJM. And this project won first prize because we pitched the idea of the vision of BDD, and it won the second prize in MIPIM last year in 2017 in Cannes for the concept project on it, to become eventually the mainly communal spaces to bring people to connect with each other. So just an idea on how to do this in all our projects, from inspiration to community management. We see how to innovate and use a user-centered approach, leveraging technology where possible. So inspiration and idea, it's all about design thinking. Design thinking is all about human-centered approach. How can I serve my community better? And what are the new trends that my community needs? And this is how we applied and we built the vision of BDD. On the execution, I have, who are present here, an amazing team who has done an amazing job for the last 5 years in executing 10 buildings in the period of 6 years. 5 years even, because that was last year. And that's a building every 6 months. And for Lebanon, that's an achievement. And why do I stress on this? Because it's all about, in the new economy, how do you execute? Ideas represent 10 to 20% of success. It is about how do you execute ideas faster and better, faster and better. Because people with the internet will be able to copy your ideas, will know about your ideas, and will take your ideas and be able to do it better. So how to execute it better and faster. Marketing and sales, it's all about social media, digital, data crunching. Many of you do not know about BDD. Mona told me many do not know about BDD. I can assure you, in the industries that we are targeting, everyone knows that BDT is the epicenter where more than 1,000 events happened last year. That's why Facebook MENA, for the first time this year, decided to do Startup Battlefield MENA, Middle East and North Africa, and selected to do it in Beirut because they visited BDD. We have the VP of Facebook from the US visit BDD last year. And when they saw the energy of the people, they decided to select Beirut. And then they said, we want to be at the epicenter of the technological ecosystem, and let's do it at BDD. And that happened on October. And this was a great success for Lebanon, because it put Lebanon on the map of technology. Facility management. We moved from preventive maintenance on demand to preventive ticketing, and more importantly, productivity, digital access. And finally, community management, because this is all about community management. Very important thing that I saw, how to leverage and how to serve the users. It's all about this platform that we're building today, the BDDNet, because this platform is what you need to be able to attract data, gather data, have everyone input his data, or our community users will enter their email, their information, to be able to get access to network, roam throughout BDD from one corner to the other, while having access to their internal network. Imagine you're here at the syndicate, and you move 3 buildings out. You're still roaming at your other community member at the network of the engineer syndicate with all the files. BDD app, I go through it rapidly. Access control, CCTV, BMS, elevators, all aggregated in the BDD community. So network connectivity across all BDD, the app, access control, CCTV, BMS, and elevators and turnstiles. What's the BDD app? We launched it, very important, and because this is the future of all users, the mobile. I forget in the house my wallet, I don't forget my mobile. And I believe many of you can notice. We go out of the car, we forget many things, but we don't forget our mobile. And that's your access to the digital work. That's the access for the millennials. That's where people and trends are spending most of their times on the mobile. And with that, what do? Door opening with the mobile. Anywhere now you roam with the BDDNet, you're secure to have access to your office and only your office on the video. And booking meeting rooms, checking events. So I'm assume checking events for all the syndicates, participating, saying I'm coming, chatting with the commerce, and know what they're happening, chatting with community, access to community discount, requesting event spaces, booking all of these, ordering food, paying directly on the app, reporting issues for any issue that happens, checking the ecosystem news, tracking and paying dues, in-app payment, and digital secretary, where I grant Wi-Fi for any visitors who are coming. For all of these, we did this. How to take it to the next step, digitalize the citizen process, e-government, make it automated, make BDD a pilot. That's what we see. We invite everyone. If you have an idea, go test in BDD. You will be around people who would like to test, a community that would like to test. We're working with Carpolo to carpool and solve our parking problems, connecting communities, leveraging technologies, and promote well-being and healthcare. That's it. Thank you. I've taken more time. I tried my best. Excuse me for that. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Rabah, for the touching presentation. Now we move to the presentation given by Dr. Serge Yazigi about From Smart Building to Smart City, the Way Ahead. Dr. Yazigi, architect, urban planner, and head of Yazigi Atelier, is a regional consultant in sustainable development and has acquired experience working in several Mashriq, Maghrib, as well as Gulf countries. The current themes of his practice are energy efficiency, sustainable planning, and heritage conservation. In 2007, he founded Majal, the academic urban observatory at Alba University of Balamand, with the aim of facilitating research and assisting localities in the formulation of adapted development strategies, where he has directed several publications in relation to planning law and regulation. Actually, Dr. Serge Yazigi serves currently as a professor of practice at the Maroun Sim'an Faculty of Engineering and Architecture, AUB. Dr. Yazigi holds a PhD in contemporary history in the field of history of urban renewal from the University of Bordeaux III, France. Professor Yazigi, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I believe my 7 minutes have just elapsed, so I'll try to make it short now. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Actually, so I'll try to be a little bit critical about, as a planner, I mean the title of Smart Cities triggered some thoughts in my mind. And I was wondering how, in the Lebanese context, will we be able to kind of achieve smart cities, knowing the various difficulties and challenges that we face. I'm talking about smart cities at the level of everyone, accessible to everyone. So economists, and I believe them, say that economy in Lebanon is in a transition mode and phase, and that knowledge and sharing technology, like you did put it, is becoming the main driver that could promote development. It's true. And when we think about smart cities and its definition, so smart cities does incorporate information and communication technologies, ICTs, and so on. So yes, it will be essential to kind of develop our economy, and this is a major bargain. I mean, this is a major challenge. This is very, very serious. How can we achieve that? Now, this is the question. So many people do advocate, and some actually maybe of the panelists indirectly, by trying to say that there are some specific technical solutions that could be brought to buildings and small neighborhoods. So many advocates that buildings or small neighborhoods can play a pivotal role in helping to achieve those smart cities goals. And that one way to simplify the process is to start, sometimes it's a good process, with one core element of every city's landscape, which is its building. So, especially in the case of Lebanon, because buildings typically are self-managed, they offer a good starting point, and developing smart buildings will give rise to smart campuses, which will foster smart communities and eventually smart cities. Simply put, so if we follow this logic, smart buildings will create a scalable foundation for creating the elusive smart city, building by building from the ground up. Now, if we consider how things are happening and might happen in Lebanon, knowing how strong, and which is great, the private sector is, so it will, maybe probably, it did start, penetrate kind of up to a certain limit the building market by changing some of our modes and how we build, how we manage, especially our buildings. And definitely in such scenarios, suppliers, solution providers, enterprise network would be working all together, this is the ideal scheme, with industry association to develop and advance the smart technology opportunities that define smart cities, again, one building at a time. However, I believe in reality, there's a limit to that approach. Businesses cannot, I think, on their own, solve the obstacles that hinder the growth of the smart technology market. This is mainly because this market needs new standards, and we didn't talk much about that. It needs new infrastructure and regulation, which are beyond the individual scope of businesses and other private stakeholders. For these reasons, the role of government along with local authorities, I think, is crucial. So the government can contribute to smart cities by playing the role of coordinator, bringing different interests and stakeholders together to establish new platforms for collaboration, but also, and mainly, by playing the role of funder, which consists of funding infrastructure and demonstrator projects, and playing the role of regulator, making sure that adapted standards and regulations are in place. Smart cities, yes, definitely they can represent a major opportunity to redirect the development of real estate market in crisis nowadays towards maybe some new opportunities. This is why we believe that the only way to move forward is to lobby for policies. This is what we should start with. So lobby for policies that can, in parallel to encouraging and securing private sector's investment, reinforce the role of the government as a facilitator as well as a market regulator. Financing these policies could rely on two major sources, for example, so maybe some direct taxes, we lack of that, and definitely PPP, public-private partnerships, since we have, again, this very dynamic private sector. In parallel to the above, we believe that the elaboration of a sustainable vision to the city, and the mayor of Ba'alin was talking about this, is also a major step. We cannot move ahead without also having this larger scale of apprehension, having a major vision. Several programs I have contributed to one done by international organizations actually showed the limit. So I contributed to a project funded by EU. It was called TESMED, and it contributed to the elaboration of sustainable energy action plan on local level. And I learned a lot actually from this project. We aimed to put these SEAPs for Beirut, for Ba'alin, and for Abeliès. It was interesting to see that in small and medium municipalities, they were able kind of to go beyond some of the difficulties, administrative, financial, and so on, that were put in place. In the case of Beirut, we did put this magnificent energy efficiency plan that covered all sectors of development for Beirut, and it ended up in the drawer. So nobody did actually implement it. So it shows that even if the private sector is kind of mature, ready, eager to proceed, but we need also the public sector to be operational. Now, nevertheless, I think we can open, we can move, we can think forward, because we had this PPP law that was really recently kind of adopted, and it can open the way through encouraging public-private sector's partnership. And we think also that we have some very interesting think tanks, universities, people who could and should be now working on developing some policies to facilitate this move from buildings, smart buildings, toward smart cities. So again, this is what I can say in 7 minutes, I don't know. The subject deserves much more than that, and thank you.
Thank you, Professor Yazdi. Indeed, the subject needs more than 7 minutes, but we are short in time. We will move to another aspect of smart cities, which is the social inclusion. We will be pleased to hear Mr. George Xantopoulos, who is an elected representative of disabled people. organizations in the National Committee for People with Disability since 2000. He is a team member in the elaboration of the Lebanese Law 220/2000 on the rights of people with disability. Member in the bilateral national committees on disability between Lebanon and Syria, and a trainer for Social Development Center staff on disabled needs and specialized services. Mr. Gantopoulos is a civil engineer, graduated from St. Joseph University in 1988. Mr. Xantopoulos, the floor is yours. Please.
Thank you. I will be very brief. I will very quickly present an introduction and pass through definitions, because you already heard about it a lot, and go to two examples and initiatives that were put worldwide and actually are arriving to Lebanon. I will specifically speak about inclusiveness and social inclusiveness, which is in the concept of smart cities taking into consideration all citizens, like everybody was saying, and involving all citizens with all the differences of these citizens in the designing and implementation of the concept of smart cities, which means also people who have disabilities, older age people, pregnant women, small children, everybody. We are speaking worldwide today about universal design, which includes standards for all these types of citizens, and smart cities can change what the difficulty that people have normally in crowded cities, and give them more comfortable feeling about how to find solutions in their mobility and in moving around in cities without fearing the crowd, the ignorance of where to go, how to go. Smart cities and ICT solutions will give them this comfort, this comfort of knowing how to do and where to do it. Again, very briefly, I will say that two world initiatives, which are G3 ICT, Global Initiative for Inclusive ICTs, and World Enabled, try to put standards and tools for mainly engineers on how to implement smart cities. I will not speak about them in detail. I will give you the address, which is smartcitiesforall.org, which give, for example, 4 guides on how to implement accessibility standards for all, how to adopt the procurement policies in cities, and how these policies can be inclusive for all, how to give better commitment to digital inclusion in cities, and how the database can give solutions in inclusive cities. 2 examples that Rashid and I saw 2 years ago when we were in Paris. One of them is implemented because more and more we see that tourism needs more guidance, and mainly that people with disability are more and more interested in moving around, traveling, and doing tourism. This is why Google Earth and TripAdvisor created a participatory website which is called Access Earth, and that is also now an application to mobile phones where people choose places they would go, and try to enter on this application to the website and say if this place is accessible or not, and which details of the place are accessible, if the bathroom is accessible or not, if the service is accessible, if the information is accessible, etc. So people, users, have the right and the choice now to give their opinion about the places and to say how accessible is each touristic place. This concept allows places to market about what they give, what they offer, and their services through this opinion of the users, but it's also an advocacy tool for people who ask for more and more places to be accessible, so they push places who are not to become accessible. Another example, which is again created by Google. Google, a lot of us know already, has created an operating system for cars which is linked to the operating system of the traffic lights on the roads. So a car without a driver can guess what road to take by being connected to the operating system of the traffic lights. So tomorrow we will use cars without drivers. It will be more easy for people who don't see, who don't hear, who have limited mobility to take a car which will be more accessible, more easy to use. Later on, we will have office cars where people can go and pick their friends and do their meeting inside the car, so they will not need to go everyone at the same place. So the car will pick them all and do their meeting in the car. We'll also have cars with a bed and a bathroom for longer travels, so hotels will not be needed anymore. People will sleep in their cars. Unfortunately, these cars will have less accident. This is why the concept is being شو بيقولوا معارض, fighted by insurance companies because accidents will be lesser. One last problem that you'll have in Lebanon, the sensors in the car will not see the جوار شو هنن the potholes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. George. We'll move to the last but not least presentation given by Mr. Jihad Shaheen about high-tech and human-centered rise of smart building. Jihad Shaheen is the founder of Navitas Technology LLC, a firm that provides innovative technologies and services that enable owners, facility managers, and occupants to optimize energy efficiency and comfort, all the while reducing operation costs. He is also a senior management consultant at Automation and Controls SRL. Jihad is a certified energy auditor from AFE, the Association of Energy Engineers, and he is actively involved in non-profit organizations. He is a member of Lebanon Green Energy Council, LGBC, since 2014 and currently serves as its general secretary. He is also a founding member and president of RNARD, which is a Lebanese non-profit organization working towards strategic and sustainable development in local communities. Jihad likes to spend his free time with his family and enjoys work on do-it-yourself projects. Please, Mr. Shaheen, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'll try to be as quick as possible. I think everybody is waiting for the dinner. First of all, I would like to thank really the Order of Engineers for being the catalyst for change. This is really the beginning of a change that we are all looking for here in Lebanon. And of course, I would like to thank the scientific committee for organizing the event and for the content. It's really very promising. I has really enjoyed this afternoon a lot. And of course, I would like to thank all the panelists, the presenters who did their job very well before me. So let me talk a little bit about smart cities that are being built in buildings. So I just want to bring everything back to the smart buildings, actually. You know, a smart city without smart buildings will not exist. So if we talk a little bit about a smart building, of course, we need to talk about human-centric smart building. We cannot just build a smart building without thinking about people. So if we talk a little bit about some numbers, you know, all of us knows that buildings, you know, and cities actually, they consume about 70% of all energy, you know, around the world. And 70% of that energy is spent by buildings. So therefore, buildings are very important and a key factor within the smart building, smart cities concept. Now, how we can manage those buildings in order to reduce energy and at the same time reduce the gas house emissions, which this is the most important part of being green, right? So technology nowadays, as we all see in IoT, is very, very important. You know, IoT is helping us to do a lot of things. The data collected, you know, and the insights that we can get from buildings by using the data we collect from IoT is very important. I'll give you an example. Who's a mechanical engineer here? Good, very good. We all know that mechanical equipment, over time, you know, they lose from their energy, from their efficiency. And by losing from their efficiency, they consume more electricity, right? So if I can manage that this efficiency of that mechanical equipment is always on the same level, then the energy consumption is down. But how can I ensure that? I can ensure that if I have an IoT device, which is a smart device that will read the data or the energy consumed by that mechanical equipment, and always checking if this data is less than the normal. And by doing so, I can immediately know that this equipment will fail. I'll give you a more detailed example. I have a fan that runs through a belt, right? And this fan is wasting energy because I know that the consumption of energy has went up. Now, the question is, if I don't have a software that looks at this data and assume that there's something wrong, you know, with that fan, then the fan will continue on spending more energy without me knowing that. But if I take the IoT data that I have and I do a comparison with the old data I used to get from the same system, then immediately I will know that there's something wrong with the fan. Okay. Now, if I have another software, which is the facility management software, whereby I have data knowing that the belt has only been changed 5 years ago, and I know that the belt life is 5 years, then I can link those two together, and I can tell, yes, I need to change the belt. And if I have a more smarter system, then my facility management software is connected to my supplier, whom I directly send him the request to order a belt, then the belt will come and I will replace it, and then this is a smart building. So smart buildings at the end of the day are not controls and monitoring. Smart buildings are built with software, with brains. So this is the difference that we talk a lot about smart buildings, thinking that only, monitoring and control is smart building. No, we need to put more knowledge, softwares, Internet of Things inside to bring what we call smart buildings. Now, I have also another subject which I would like, to mention is actually what are the challenges that we face with smart buildings. We talked a lot about, smart buildings are good, we will save energy, and so on and so forth. But let's just mention a few of those challenges. A very important challenge in smart buildings is something called split incentive. What is split incentive? I'm an investor building a building. Why should I put smart devices, and why should I build it smart and pay more money? The split incentive is that the incentive for smart buildings is with one who's going to live in it, not with the investor. So this is one of the challenges that we need to talk about, and I believe here governments and private sectors, NGOs, need to work to bring that split incentive down to zero, so in order to help and give incentives, to investors to invest in green buildings. Second, communication protocols. Let's assume I have an existing building with a lot of systems in there. How can I connect all of these data together and manage them? So communication is a it's a big challenge for us. If I have a new building that I want to build with smart technologies inside, that's very easy. I'll take the best technologies, put them together, they're going to work. But what about the existing buildings? And this is one of the challenges we have. The other challenge that we have, who's from the maintenance departments here? Who works in maintenance departments? Can we believe that one day maintenance department will be run by IT departments? That's the question. I don't have an answer to that. But believe me, one day, IT departments will run maintenance departments. Why? Because softwares nowadays will do the job of people on the ground. Softwares will know that we have a problem in this area. I'll send them a message, go and fix it. So there's a challenge here with maintenance departments. And last, but not least, existing facility management procedures will change. We will not anymore rely on the existing facility management procedures, because the software is doing those procedures, is checking what's going on, what's going wrong in the building. So these are the challenges that we're going to face. In other words, our work will change. The way we do business in these buildings will change. Now, I have a question here. Anybody knows how Google works? Google Map? Anybody knows how Google Map works? Yeah, but how it will tell you that there's traffic here?
The number of mobile reads from the mobile.
100%, exactly. Exactly. So this is the IoT, this is the technology, that's the software that's doing the job. So the data collected, the software will analyze this data and will tell you back, this is what's going on. Now, if we talk about buildings then, let's assume I have a building here that I have collected data from that building, and I know now that a hospital, if I want to build it in this area, it will consume that much, it will run this way. Now, for architects and designers, this information that I have, which will be built into BIM, now we go back to BIM, then BIM will help us to decide how this next building should be done in this area, because I have more and more information. So the way smart buildings is moving is totally different from, in technology is helping us to drive, smart buildings in a different way. Now, one last thing, somebody were asking yesterday about blockchain. I just want to, clarify what is blockchain for people, who doesn't know what is blockchain. Blockchain is the next IoT. It's the next revolution in smart buildings. Actually, blockchain is a distributed ledger. When we talk ledger, we talk mainly money, but it's a distributed ledger. In other ways, each building will have its own data, and there's one software that will read those data from different buildings and decide what in this building I should do and in what this building I should do. In other words, with IoT, I used to take one building and decide and take decision based on this information residing in this building. With blockchain, all the information residing in so many different buildings will help me to decide and drive my business and how I manage my building further. So these are some of the ideas that I wanted to discuss, and hopefully I didn't take too much of your time. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shaheen. So we will give time to questions.
No questions.
Good evening. My name is Abdullah. I have two questions. First to Mr. Shaheen. It's not actually a question, it's just a small comment. A kind of an incentive for developers or investors to put smart systems in their buildings or in their projects is basically currently in Lebanon is a way to differentiate themselves in the market from other competitors building other just standard buildings. So just a small comment. But this is not sustainable way, which eventually will not be there when all the buildings are smart. My second question is for Mr. Lahoud. Home automation in Lebanon is becoming a kind of a trend. So how do you think it can take part of moving to a smart building and eventually to a smart city? Taking into consideration the different brands, protocols, and companies and suppliers in the market, especially that Lebanon is a kind of an open market for such products. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Actually, when we talk about the Internet of Things, the first word is the Internet. And the Internet has gained a lot of attention, a lot of investment due to the openness and the interoperability. So this is one main feature that we need in any market in order to grow this market. There are some studies that demonstrate there are billions of dollars that can be gained when we develop open interfaces, open solutions. So if we think about the Lebanese market, we will definitely have some closed source, some standards, some private solutions that are already deployed, but the market evolution will not take place without the interconnection and the interoperability.
Thank you. Another question? Okay. Please.
Good evening once again, and thank you for the presentations. So I guess that most of us who are still here in this room are the ones who have attended the sessions for both days, and I hope this is the majority. I am here today not as a mechanical engineer, but I am here as a program manager for a sustainability project, environmental sustainability project with FES, a German foundation here in Lebanon. So we've heard many approaches for implementing smart cities in Lebanon. We've heard some success stories from Lebanon and abroad. We've heard many approaches like business approach, the technological approach, and we've seen things from the energetic angle, and we've seen some examples that focus on the human role in order to implement smart cities. I'm going to ask a very tough question. We've got all the information. What's next? I mean, where are we in the phase of planning to start and implement the smart cities here in Lebanon? And I'm not talking just about small examples here and there. What kind of strategies do we need? Here we are in a room full of engineers and architects, and I guess we are the main human resource that can lead in such a domain. So really, what's next? This is the first question. And the second question is, and this topic was brought up yesterday actually, if we are not the political decision makers of the country, how can we put the implementation of smart cities as a reality in front of our government? So yesterday we saw that we had two members of the parliament who were here at the beginning, at the opening, and they didn't even have the time to listen to what we have in this regard. So we are not the decision makers, we are not the politicians, but we are the main key to do the lobbying. So how can the civil society and the elite of the educated people, all the way with NGOs and other foundations, how can they impose the smart cities as a reality so that the decision makers will have to go with our flow and not the other way around? And thank you.
Tough, but I'll try to answer a bit. One thing is how to approach and start to implement. I believe Lebanon has always survived on the private initiatives. Now we live, as you said, in a very, very, very hard economic conditions, one of the worst that I've seen personally since I came back to Lebanon, since the last 14 years. And due to, as you're saying, increase in corruption, let's say, big increase in corruption. And what is the role here is the roles of the new generation, the millennials. What the syndicate is here and the potential talent that Lebanon has is to try potentially to do some challenges or competitions among the syndicates to approach some key problems. What are the most important problems, and to be on a Beirut level. We've had in the TechCrunch Trust event the head of mobility and innovation of Toyota, just presenting their vision of what's happening in Japan, in Europe, and the States. And one of the questions is, what do you see being implemented here in the region and in the third world countries, or even 10th world countries? And his answer was simply very minimal types of technology that are currently being implemented. They are going ahead with e-logistics in Japan, 150 cars. I thought when this will be implemented, I thought the answer would be in the upcoming 5 or 10 years. They are implementing it the upcoming year. 150 cars will be on the roads the upcoming years. And from that perspective, for this country, we're really far behind the advances that we see in the States or in Europe, and try to see how to customize it to the challenges that we're facing in Lebanon. Try to see as led by the syndicate of engineers and the talent, as you said, and try to do some competition and challenges to come up with solutions to address some of the key challenges that can be done and set the mark by the syndicate of engineers, being IoT connected, being app connected with all its members, to launch these challenges, to be syndicate. All of these set the stone, the government will follow. They will have to follow. You can implement here, and then they will follow. You cannot wait until they change. It will take time. On the other part, my belief takes time, but at the end of days, it will change. It will be positive. We cannot go on the same direction, because either you will have a civil revolution, or you will have just a crash of the whole economic systems. And there will be something that will be positive. But until then, you have to rely on the private sector. And it's always the private sector that has driven Lebanon. And this is how you can start by these smart. And we go back, smart is how you can address problems of your citizens using some technology to make it easier and better life. And this is my opinion.
I would like just to add one sentence. I'm completely okay with that. We should build on the private sector, but also we should produce policies that kind of will give incentive for all stakeholders to participate within this effort. And definitely we shouldn't forget the role of the public institutions. So public policies will kind of habilitate as much as possible. We know what are the challenges and difficulties. Public institutions also to play their role. So there's a lot of policy making that needs to be done.
So I just wanted to comment on what you were saying, Muhammad. So there's one thing, and then there's one thing that we talked about yesterday, and I know I touched upon in my presentation, and again, sorry for my very sexy voice. It starts with the vision. The question that I keep asking myself when I got here, and we've had a lot of conversations, who do you want to be when you grow up? So when we did projects in Boston or New York or Los Angeles or in Columbus, we talked about Nairobi yesterday, we talked about, well, I guess not yesterday, but in other situations, Tokyo, they had a vision. In your presentation, you have a vision for your central district, sorry, I can't remember the name, but which is actually very impressive because you're actually focusing on here's what I want to be, then how do I get there? So the question is, it starts by, from the public side, and you talk about the public institutions, let's sit down and talk about who do we want to be as we grow up in terms of a transportation system, in terms of an energy system. No one's going to stop you. I mean, you can come up with ideas, you can come up with a strategy. The question remains if those strategies are implemented. But if you have a vision in terms of where you want to go, then that's where you can go back and say, okay, let me start implementing projects steps by steps. I know yesterday we talked about, okay, the infrastructure is not good, but people don't really follow, driving directions. I was coming down here and I almost got into an accident because some guy was just decided to drive my way, and I know I was not on the wrong way. So things like that should not be happening, and things like that could be implemented gradually, but if there's an interest in using technology on roadsides, on lights, where have you, on intersections, so you can actually depict plates and basically anonymously sending people tickets and telling them tough luck, you're going to have to pay. You know, technology cannot play politics because, you know, technology is technology. Once you do something wrong, we deal with this in the States all the time, and you get a ticket, you're going to have to pay that $250. There's a difference between that and talking to a cop and getting yourself out of, you know, paying a ticket or going to a judge or telling them I'm so-and-so and I'm the son of so-and-so. So, but there are options, and you can't be sitting here and saying I'm, you know, weak, I can't do anything about it, because you can. And last time I checked, Lebanon is more of a capitalistic country. So you're right, the private sector has to lead. There's no other options. And if the private sector is able to use pilot to promote it, to promote what they're doing, the government will only be able to follow. Because what are we going to do? We're going to stay stuck in dark ages, and things are looking better in our pilots. So that's my take.
Thank you all. Finally, I think that we can only say let's all try our best, and hopefully we will get something better very soon. This ends our session and our today's conference. Hopefully you enjoyed and it was fruitful. We wish to meet you for on other OEA activities and scientific committees. Typically the next conference in February about the digital revolution. And thank you again and have a good night.